So in my last video, we got this, a Canon T2i. And since then, it has become my main camera for basically everything. And so far, I have no complaints with it, except one thing. As I use it more, I made the realization that I should probably get some sort of viewing monitor, especially if I'm gonna use it for vlogging since it has no flip out screen. So I need to get one, but we're not gonna buy one. Where's the fun in that? We're gonna make one out of this. This is a backup monitor I got from AliExpress for $1, and this is what I plan on using as a video monitor. Now it is only 4.3 inches, but that's probably for the best since I plan on using this rig for vlogging and other things, and I'd at least want it to be somewhat portable. Alright, so now that I got all of that out of the way, let's get into making this. But before that, I have to make sure it works first. So I'm gonna hook up 12 volts DC, and then I'm gonna hook up this camera. Alright, now let's see if it works. So as you can see, it works perfectly fine. You can see the live view from the camera. So I think we're ready to modify this thing. The first thing I did was open the back and remove the mount that the monitor sat on. I then grabbed my multimeter to see which wires connected to what. After verifying the connections, I then snipped off the rest of the cable and prepared to hook it up to a USB charger for a Canon NB2L battery. I chose to do this because it will allow me to use a camcorder battery for power while still giving me the ability to plug it into the wall whenever I need to. As you can see, most of the work has already been done in an earlier project. Previously, I opened up the charger, soldered wires to the positive and negative terminals, and created a hole for the wires to come out of using a soldering iron. I then had to do the same with the back plate of the monitor. So I began by melting out the mounts for the original hinge design. After that, I then created a hole for the wires to go through. I then got out my soldering supplies and began wiring everything together. It was then time for testing. At first, all I got was a white screen, but after reseating the ribbon cable, I got an image. After verifying that everything was working properly, I then used heat shrink to finalize the connections. I also took the time to add a power switch. I then hot glued the power switch into place, as well as the USB charger, before closing it up for a final time. I then hot glued the input wires into place, as well as a tripod screw from a broken flip camera. After that, it was time for testing. As you could see, the tripod mounting solution didn't work, but I continued on and chose to combat that problem later. Alright, so everything seems to be working fine, so I'm gonna call it a day and we're gonna continue working on this tomorrow. Alright, so now we're going to tackle this tripod mounting issue. I originally wanted to use the screw out of this flip camera, but after seeing how it held up during the tests, I decided to replace it with this. This is a tripod mounting screw for a vintage camcorder I tore apart, and now we're going to use it on the monitor. And to do that, we're going to be using super glue. I know it's not the strongest, but in the case that it does fall off, I'm probably going to replace it with something like epoxy. Alright, so let's get into doing this. I first began by removing excess plastic from the piece, using a soldering iron and a pair of pliers to do the job. After removing all the excess plastic, I then sanded the piece down to smooth it out. Alright, well, despite looking like it's been molded out of JB Weld steel stick, I think that's pretty good. So now we can move on to attaching it to the monitor. Here I began scuffing up the piece to give the super glue something to bite onto. After that, I put on some gloves, applied a generous amount to both the piece and the monitor, and let it rest for a while. Alright, so it's been a few hours and I think the glue is mostly cured. I know it takes 24 hours for super glue to fully cure, but it should be cured enough for testing. Alright, and there it is. As you can see, it's holding up better than the screw from the flip Mino. So yeah, I think it's sturdy enough for my uses. Alright, so now that the monitor can properly be mounted onto the camera, all we need to do now is find out how long the battery lasts. Alright, so it's the next day, and we're going to do a battery test. So here's the setup right now. Here I have my trusty Handycam. This is going to be recording the whole thing, as well as providing a video source for the monitor. On the computer, I have an online stopwatch. This is what I'm going to use to keep track of time. And here I have a GoPro, just for fun. So yeah, let's get this thing started. Alright, so here I have a freshly charged NB2L battery from Caster. Here are the specifics of it if you really want them. And we're going to put it in the monitor. Alright, so now we can start the test in 3, 2, 1. And off it goes. Oh, turned off. Maybe I'll turn it back on again. Oh, still works. Oh, GoPro ran out of battery. Yep. 30 minutes in, and as you can see, still working perfectly fine, except for the power flicker from earlier. Oh, just did it again. Pause it real quick, put the battery back in, and we're gonna continue in 3, 2, 1. Alright. Guys, well, I think it's coming to a close. As you can see, the monitor is flickering a lot now. So I think we could stop the timer and say that the test is done. So we're gonna say it lasted for about 2 hours. Alright, now let's go back to the table. And now we're back at the table. Honestly, 2 hours is what I expected since this isn't really that strong of a battery. And for those wondering why I used this specific battery, it's honestly because it's what I have on hand. But I designed it so the plate can be removed and replaced with a more ordinary plate, such as one for an NPF. Unfortunately, this one is dead, but when I do get the chance, I'll buy more of these and swap out the battery plate on this. But anyways, let's talk more about this monitor. So it turns out this thing actually has some settings for picture adjustment, but they don't really do much. I mean, even the brightness setting doesn't even do much. And I found that the only useful setting is this aspect ratio setting. You can switch between 4:3 and 16:9. I just keep it on 16:9. But anyways, in the settings menu, we have brightness, contrast, saturation, tint, language, and the aspect ratio mode setting I was just talking about. All are controlled via these buttons on the back. Another thing I would like to talk about is how it would probably be better if it was used with something like this. This is a Sony Handycam I used to record skate videos and whatever. And since both use fully analog connections, see that? It would probably be better off being used with this rather than something like a DSLR, which is my use case. But nonetheless, it will definitely be used for both applications. Anyways, that's basically all I have to say about this thing. I will definitely be using this in future shoots. I promise I'm working on other videos. Because even though it's not that high quality of a screen, it'll help me with framing and focusing and whatever. And that's basically all that matters. But anyways, that's all the time I've got, and I'll see you in the next one. Thank you for watching.